How's it going, everybody? I am Dan Lohmar, CFP professional with United Wealth Management, where we specialize in PRAP management and financial planning for pilots at United Airlines. And like many of you, my business partner, Alan Bewley, and I are both pilots for United. Welcome back to another video. I just shot a video overviewing the contributions for the PRAP for 2024, the limits, talked about the compensation limit, talked about what PRAP cash is, what this new PRAP enhancement is also. And that's what I want to talk more about in this video is the PRAP enhancement and captain contributions, and not specifically just captain contributions, but really anybody who's going to be making a fair amount of income, especially if you're going to be over the compensation limit of $345,000. So it kind of plays more on the captain end of the pay scale. But it could be anybody who's just flying a lot. So there's a couple caveats to watch out for with this new PRAP enhancement, and that's really what I want to talk about. Is that and just kind of point out some of those things and some examples of what contributions look like throughout the year, and some of the things to watch out for. So hey, remember, if you haven't done it, remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you know when new videos come out. Like the video, and of course, share this with our fellow pilots, because I always say those who are not watching it are probably the ones that need to watch it the most. So I appreciate you doing that. Pass it on to our fellow pilots. We've also got a new resource library on our website, and UnitedWealthManagement.com. There's some checklists on there that you can download. And I used to have links to specific checklists on my videos, but now I'm just going to have one link to the resource library. So check that out. There might be some useful information on there for you. As always, this is not tax, legal, or investment advice. It's for educational purposes only, and it's up to you to determine whether the education here is suitable for your financial situation. So anyway, just a quick review of what I talked about in my last video. If you haven't seen it, I'll have a link in the show notes, and also I'll have it at the end of the video here. But watch the previous video, because I really talked about the overview of the contributions for 2024. I talked about PRAP cash, the compensation limit, and I'm going to be a little bit more specific in this video, and that's what we're talking about right here. Quick review, too, of contribution types. We can make pre-tax, Roth, and post-tax contributions. So quick review: pre-tax, that money goes into the PRAP before taxes are paid from your paycheck. So it's a tax savings up front. And of course, when that comes out in retirement, it's taxable income in retirement. Roth contributions go into the PRAP after taxes come out of the paycheck. So you're paying taxes on it right now, but then it grows tax-free. And assuming qualified withdrawals in retirement, it comes out tax-free in retirement. So that's the big thing there. And then post-tax contributions are contributions that you can make. Again, they're after taxes. They're not labeled Roth contributions because they actually go into the traditional 401k. But there's an advantage there in that they can automatically be converted to the Roth portion of the PRAP. And so that's why there's a big advantage to doing that. And then also, if you're trying to accumulate or create RHA spillover, again, I talked about that in the last video, how that talks about if you're trying to create RHA spillover, making post-tax contributions can help do that. Post-tax contributions, as they go in, they can either accumulate, they can stay in the traditional 401k and accumulate. But like I said, most people I'm talking to just automatically convert those. And then the other caveat too is that if you do Roth conversions of the PRAP, I always say if you have a post-tax contribution balance in there, that transaction could be taxable. So just a heads up on that. So let's talk about the PRAP enhancement. And the reason I'm talking about this, because there's just a couple things to watch out for. So remember, in December, they came out with this PRAP enhancement, and the big thing is that now you can make pre-tax and or Roth and post-tax contributions at the same time. Whereas in the past, post-tax contributions would not start until your pre-tax, your Roth limit was full, and it wouldn't start until the next pay check or the next pay cycle. So now they can come out at the same time. So in the past, if you were making 20% pre-tax and 20% post-tax, they would come out 20%. one would fill up, and then the next one would start. Now, if you made 20 and 20, it's going to be a 40% deduction from your paycheck. So that's the reason for the heads up on this. And then if you lower that amount to 10%, so that it equals 20, that's what we're going to talk about. There's a couple things to watch out for if you do that. And remember that all post-tax contributions in December were turned off. So if you didn't notice that and you're expecting post-tax contributions to come out, you need to go back into your PRAP website and make your post-tax contributions if that's appropriate for you and at the appropriate time. And I'll talk about that also as it gives some examples. So I kind of talked about some gotchas right there. The one I talked about is that, in December they were turned off. And again, probably the biggest one is, and again, if you're on the higher end of the pay scale or your income is above $345,000, the big gotcha here is that if you're splitting your contributions 50-50, there is a chance that your pre-tax limit may not get reached by the time your entire PRAP is full. And again, assuming over age 50, $76,500 for 2024, under 50, $69,000 for 2024. So it's because the thing is filling up so fast, the entire thing could get filled up before you're reaching your pre-tax limit. And that's really the big gotcha here. And I'll show you some examples of what that looks like. The other thing too is there's no specific guidance as to when you make or change your elections as to when exactly that's going to take effect out of your paycheck. So the only guidance I've got is that if you make an election change on the PRAP website, the only guidance is it will take effect 1 to 2 paychecks after you make the change. Okay, so there could be some sharpshooting here as to when you make these changes. So that's just something to be heads up for. And then the other thing too is if you're gonna turn your post-tax contributions on sometime after your pre-tax limit is full, it's going to require sometime later in the year after your pre-tax limit is full, sometime throughout the year, you have to monitor those. You have to go in there and make those changes and then kind of guess on what paycheck that's going to be effective for, 1 to 2 paychecks after the time you make that change. So that's the big thing about that. So let's look at some examples I want to show you here. I'm going to use a wide body captain on the pay scale, making we're making $447.24 an hour, flying 85 hours a month. And let me see here. Let's pull that back up. Making 85 hours a month, you're going to be over, in this situation, you're over 50, so that increases your limits. We're not going to talk about vacation, forfeiture days, and RH, anything like that. And let's just say you're going to do a 8% contribution, and you're not going to, and that's all you're going to do for right now. And we're not going to talk about profit sharing right now. So we're going to look at this with no profit sharing, as if maybe you're not going to contribute profit sharing. So if you do this, you do the math, 8%, it's a little over $3,000 a month. You think, hey, $3,000 a month times 12, that's $36,000. So I should have no problem hitting my limit, my $30,500 limit, if that's what I'm trying to do at some time during the year. That is not the case, okay? And this is where the compensation limit comes in. And this is also where the fact that because we're making a higher pay rate and 70% United contributions, this is where it starts to be a factor. So if you think 8% is going to be good enough, let's take a look at the graph and kind of see how it adds up here throughout the year. The blue area are your contributions, personal contributions. United contributions are in yellow. They're coming in on top of that. And as you see what happened, as they accumulate throughout the year, about August, they hit the $76,500 limit. Remember, you can no longer make contributions when the PRAP fills up to $76,500 if you're over 50. And so what happens is you've reached that limit before you hit the $30,000 limit. So you don't actually reach your pre-tax bucket in time. you don't actually reach the pre-tax limit of $30,500. Let's just say if you're under 50, that's a little bit different because the limits are a little bit lower. You do actually hit the $23,000 limit down here. So it is a little bit lower because you don't have as high limits to hit on that. So let's go back to assuming your 8%. And of course, because you run out of room here, and you say, well, I want to make 8% post-tax, and I want to make 8% pre-tax. I want to make 8% post-tax. That, and again, this is if you're going to turn it on later in the year, it doesn't make any difference, okay? Because you just don't have any time left in the year. You don't have any room to make those contributions if that's the way it works out. So the next example, well, what's it going to take to reach the pre-tax limit? Well, you just got to start plugging some numbers in here, and it looks like 12% turns out, a 12% contribution, let's call it $4,500 per month in contributions. That reaches the $30,500 limit down here. You had to hitting that limit in July. And again, you can't make post-tax contributions there because you're hitting it about the same time you're reaching the $76,500 limit. So there's no more room to put post-tax contributions in there. So now you say, well, I do want to make post-tax contributions. So I'm going to increase my contributions. Let's just say 20%. That's a fairly common number for what I see. They go in a little bit faster. You come down here, your pre-tax limit gets hit in April, the next pay cycle or so. You make some post-tax contributions, and you do have room to put about $3,000 in here. This is the calculator gets a little fuzzy when we start doing intra-month calculations. It's not exactly it's not exact as far as like what intra-month contributions are going to be, but it'd say, hey, so you potentially have some room to make some post-tax contributions in there, but not a whole lot. So let's come back here and say, oh well, what happens if I do this? I'm going to make them Roth contributions, pre-tax or Roth contributions concurrent with post-tax contributions. Okay, so I'm going to mark that yes. And I'm just going to say, well, I want to do 10% because I want a 20% contribution total. I'm going to do 10% down there. And this is where I'm talking about the caveat before. This is where if you split them 50-50, 10% pre-tax, 10% post-tax, and for a total of a 20% contribution, let's look and see what happens down here. Your pre-tax money's coming in here. Post-tax contributions are coming in on top of it. And again, you're filling up all the limits pretty quickly with United contributions coming on top. You hit $76,500. And again, you're doing that before you hit the $30,500 limit. And so that's where, that's what I'm talking about is if you're splitting your contributions 50-50, that's where you got to be careful that in your priority is to hit the pre-tax limit. That's where you got to be careful. You might have to change these a little bit. And what would that look like? So let's just say 15. Again, you're targeting a 20% contribution altogether. So in 5, let's see if that looks like. Yeah, so that ends up working out about right. You're making them both at the same time, pre-tax in blue, post-tax in orange. You're going at the same time, and you do hit you do reach your $30,500 limit there. By about June. So just keep that in mind. These are guidelines, okay? Because everybody's different. Everybody flies a different amount. There's differences in the limits based on what your age is. So don't get too caught up in the exact numbers I'm using because I just want you to be aware that there are some things to watch out for when you're kind of calculating what your contributions are going to be. In the other case, though, if you were to say, if you're going to split them concurrently and you had larger pre-tax contributions, like, hey, I'm okay making 20% contributions and 5% post-tax contributions, there's no problem with that whatsoever. Now you're gonna be putting in plenty of pre-tax money and you're gonna have some post-tax going in at the same time. And again, if you're making mega contributions, in this case, you're doing one after the other. This is not. Let's say you're doing it concurrently. You're doing 20% pre-tax and 20% post-tax at the same time, you can get a lot of money in there. So you can get up to 30. You can get actually in this case, because it's filling up so fast. Actually, in that case, you didn't actually reach the $30,000 limit. And so let's say you increase that to 25%. There you go. So those are some things to watch out for. Now, an easy fix, after all this is said, an easy fix to this is if you're in this scenario and you're doing 10, and let's just say you're going to do 10% pre-tax and you're going to do 10% post-tax. An easy fix to this is just to say, oh, well, guess what? I've got some profit sharing and I'm going to contribute 90% of my profit sharing in there. That fixes it also. Okay. Because, and you're just assuming you're making your profit sharing contribution on a pre-tax basis because your pre-tax bucket is going to be pretty much filled up by the end of February. So that's an easy fix to do that. In a case like that, if you're going 10% pre-tax, a good chunk of profit sharing in there and 10% post-tax in there, you're hitting the pre-tax limit, $30,500, no problem. And you've got $15,000 in post-tax contributions. And remember, you're going to be filled up by the end of April in this particular scenario. And so remember, it's not like you're putting those contributions in there throughout the entire year. As soon as these limits are reached, you can't put any more in. And so you have a full paycheck with no deductions the rest of the year. So that's one thing to think about. And let's just take a look and see. I've got some folks that are putting in mega contributions in 40% and 40% at the same time, plus some profit sharing. So really, you really start to run out of room here pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, as you can kind of see when you do that, there's very little room for United contributions to go in there. That's the whole point of that. And that's how you get mega spillover into the RHA. And in this case, you're looking at about $58,000 approximately being funded into the RHA. And then in this case, also your PRAP cash. If you calculate PRAP cash, you're getting about $8,900 in PRAP cash. That's not paid out as a single check. Just remember that's excess contributions, 17% that gets paid out on a monthly basis after you hit that the PRAP cash limit of $403,824 for the year. So. Anyway, look, there's a lot of things to consider here, but one of the main points here is that this can easily be fixed just by making a pre-tax contribution. And again, if you do that and you fill up your pre-tax bucket and you want to make post-tax contributions, you might have to go in there and either turn on your post-tax contributions at some time after you think your pre-tax limit's going to be reached, or you could even increase them. So at some point, that's the thing about this is it's going to require to actually maximize this thing. It's going to require some monitoring of your PRAP contributions throughout the year. So that's a big thing. That's the big takeaway from this. So anyway, just kind of wrap things up, summarize things again. Just remember, there's no post-tax election contributions got carried over from December 23, and so you have to turn those on if you haven't done that and if it's appropriate for you. And again, post-tax contributions are not additive, they're not sequential. And again, if your priority is to fill up the pre-tax bucket, you're going to have to take a quick look at exactly how your contributions add up throughout the year. But again, easy fix of that is just putting a good chunk of profit sharing in on a pre-tax basis if that's your priority. And I've been emphasizing pre-tax here because I'm talking about people on the higher end of the pay scale. So typically, we're talking about pre-tax contributions versus Roth contributions. And the other thing about that too is if you're making Roth contributions, so anywhere on the pay scale, if you're deciding to make Roth contributions instead of pre-tax contributions, it doesn't matter. This whole enhancement doesn't matter, and whether you're doing them sequentially or whether you're doing them at the same time, it doesn't matter as much if you have automatic post-tax contributions turned on, and that's because they all end up in the Roth 401k if you have that turned on. So that part of it doesn't matter quite as much. And again, it probably going to require some monitoring and adjustments of contributions throughout the year. If you really want to maximize this thing, no specific guidance on when contribution changes will take effect from your paycheck. It's just It's just 1 to 2 paychecks away. That's about all they've given us. And again, this issue doesn't matter as much if you're making Roth contributions and post-tax contributions if you got those turned on. So, hey, I know there's a lot going on, but it's worth talking about because the entire purpose of the PRAP enhancement is to maximize contributions into the PRAP. Because again, in the past, you could miss potentially an entire pay cycle of contributions because of the timing of when it gets filled up and when post-tax contributions start. And so, yeah, there is potential here from the analysis I've done. For most people, there is some potential to get another, $1,000 to $5,000 into the PRAP, depending on how you go about doing that. And so that's a good thing, but it's gonna require a little bit of sharpshooting, in my opinion, to do that. So that's the whole purpose of that. And it doesn't make as much difference if you're doing Roth and post-tax, because if you got auto Roth conversions turned on, it's going to end up in the same place. So anyway, a lot going on. I want to mention that stuff. If you got questions, come to our website, www.unitedwealthmanagement.com. We've got a contact form there. You can shoot some questions. And other than that, it's been a busy year. I hope to have some more videos coming out. I totally appreciate your comments. I've been getting great feedback on these videos. We had a very, very busy year in 2023. And so I didn't get to too many. I don't think I did any in 2023. So I want to get back on the bandwagon, get these things out there. These changes are important, especially with the new contract and stuff like that. So I want to get back out there and get these out for the pilot group. And we were busy enough. We did hire a new full-time advisor on our team. We're welcome her to the team. So that's going to help us do some of these videos and stuff like that too. So if you got questions for Alan or myself, come to our website, check it out. Hey, until next time, fly safe. Audio Jungle.